So over the last couple of years, I've started to notice that calisthenics has grown from what used to be a niche-based community, and if you just mention the word calisthenics, some people might think you're speaking an ancient Greek language, to now being one of the most popular and sought after style of training that's pleasing to the eye with its flashy and technical training nature. The question now becomes, why are so many people transitioning to calisthenics? So before we get into why calisthenics, let's briefly explain what calisthenics even is. And if you actually do a quick Google search, it says calisthenics is a type of exercises that uses your body weight as resistance to build strength, endurance, and flexibility. Calisthenic exercises can be done with little to no equipment and can be performed at a moderate pace. So in essence, bodyweight training is utilizing your body's weight for resistance. However, the problem with the process of training with your body weight isn't as simple as one may think. For example, many individuals who are eager to start calisthenics might seem to find trouble with just doing the basic pull-ups, dips, or push-ups. On the other hand of the spectrum, advancing to more advanced and elite levels of bodyweight strength becomes much more difficult to implement unless you utilize equipment such as resistance bands, you utilize extra added loads, you utilize parallel bars, things to that nature, and this is essentially going to help you get or break past those transitionary plateaus. So now that we understood what calisthenics is, let's talk about why calisthenics. And funny enough, the inspiration for even making this video is from a couple Reddit posts that came to my attention. And this post in particular stuck with me the most. So the original post says, "What is it about calisthenics that causes almost everybody to look like a shredded ninja warrior? Over the past 2 years, I've lost 70 pounds and have started to reevaluate my ideal body image. I'm down to 23% body fat and I'd like to get down to 15% by next year. I'll be 43 years old next year for reference. My somewhat unrealistic body image goal is to look like Gray Fox from Metal Gear Solid or Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe. Both of these ninjas are fleet, slender, and have concealed strength." Okay, I'm not sure who Gray Fox is from Metal Gear Solid, at least like the specific character, but I'm not gonna lie, like these are very unique ways of seeking aspirations for physique, body goals, but let me keep reading what the post has to say. "After looking at what types of training causes people to have different types of bodies, I noticed that almost everyone who practices bodyweight training, calisthenics, has achieved the body that I want. But here's my question. What is it about calisthenics that causes the human body to develop such slender, explosive muscles and keep the waist trim while also not creating a barrel chest?" I'm assuming that's like a bird inverted chest or something. "Is there a development of slow and fast muscle fiber that keeps the muscle slender?" My apologies if this sounds like a strange and juvenile question, but I have a lot to learn. Great question, great comment, great post. Now after reading this, I'm definitely interested to see what other people commented about the original post, but I want to make sure that I dissect this post first with my own preconceived notion before I start looking into the other comments. Now, first and foremost, seeking aspiration from fictional characters is definitely a slippery slope. These characters, more so than most, are often exaggerated in terms of their physique and their appearance. And in the events that they actually seem to look naturally attainable in terms of their physique, well, they actually take inspiration from non-fictional characters, aka real people, specifically natural people. So in my humble opinion, in my most respective opinion, the lesser evil of the two is to just choose to compare yourself to natural, non-fictional people. Moving along, the comment that he made regarding different training styles causes people to have different types of physiques, and based off the body types that calisthenics athletes train and have seems to be the goal and the approach that the original post wants in terms of his physique. So this physique is something along the lines of being lean enough to see, the definition of your abs and also striations in your muscles, but also muscular enough to feel one's genetical muscle insertions and to have that full and fill that frame. So let me stop right there. Resistance training in general, giving any training discipline or style, can get you lean and muscular. However, the degree of how lean you are will be based on your nutrition and how much energy do you expend on a weekly basis. Take an elite Olympic marathon runner and an IFBB pro bodybuilder. They are both within acceptable, considered extreme cases of leanness, even though they look vastly different. This is because the way that they train directly affects the degree of how well filled their muscle insertions are, or how full their muscularity is, which leads to the different training styles one can utilize to fill their muscle insertions by building more muscle mass. And in regards to muscle insertion, it will vary from person to person, as it is contingent on one's genetic makeup structure. For example, you can have two individuals with similar amounts of muscle mass in their biceps, but the actual shape of the biceps can be different, which can make the actual bicep appear to be either less prominent or more prominent depending on their muscle insertions, aka their genetic makeup structure. So one's muscle insertion will have a direct correlation to the way that a muscle is going to be shaped and how much fuller that muscle belly will appear to be, so even though they carry the same amount of muscle mass. I really hope the nuances of building muscle and its appearance with different training styles and the overall genetic makeup structure that an individual can have really makes sense, because this foundational principle is gonna be really the bread and butter of my next couple of points. Understand that with calisthenics, you can build a physique that is similar to a natural bodybuilder. Why is that? Well, that's pretty much because with calisthenics, you can still train all the necessary muscle groups that a natural bodybuilder who does strictly weightlifting will utilize. And with calisthenics, you can still adequately train those specific muscle groups in order to induce muscle hypertrophy to build muscle. I mean, don't take my word for it, but let's actually take a look at what the natural bodybuilders of the silver era actually look like. And as you can see, while taking nutrition and cardio into account for it to be the same, these physiques are elegantly muscular with the right amount of muscle mass that fully engulfs their muscle insertions. Well-developed chest, wide V-taper frame by developing their lats and shoulders, and of course, we can't forget about the muscularity of their bicep fullness. And this is what building the body at a natural, high level looks like. And if you compare their physiques with modern day calisthenic athletes, specifically the upper body, because we all know calisthenics isn't great for building the lower body muscularity, but athletes such as Ian Barsicle, Baki HD, DJ Stepik, just to name a few, will have similar physiques in terms of muscularity and leanness. Now, if this doesn't convince you that you can build a bodybuilder physique like the silver era bodybuilders, then let me break this down even further. The degree of how well shaped a muscle group can appear to be is contingent on the following: how much muscle mass do they have, and what is their muscle insertions looking like? And now that we know that bodybuilders are specifically training for building the physique from an aesthetics standpoint, we can obviously agree to say that bodybuilders will have a much more objectively agreed upon, well-balanced physique, a more muscular physique for each particular muscle group, like, because that's just what they're training for. Whereas with calisthenic athletes, they don't train to build a body. If anything, the way that they train is to focus on building strength to obtain specific exercises and goals. And the byproduct of that is the body being built. So a key difference: one is specifically training for aesthetics, the other one is specifically training for strength. That's because bodybuilders will specifically slice their workouts, right, individual workouts, to help build particular muscle groups through isolation exercises, right? So everything is catered around specifically building a muscle group. That's why you got bodybuilders doing like the Arnold split, where it's like chest and back, and then you got arms on its own day, and things of that nature. However, we can't say that calisthenic athletes are going to be like on the complete lower end of the spectrum in terms of physiques. We can agree that bodybuilders will, objectively speaking, have better physiques, more balanced, muscle mass evenly distributed upon each muscle group. But calisthenic athletes, when they train correctly, they're not going to be falling that far off from the silver era bodybuilders. Reason being is calisthenics and bodybuilding actually have a lot of overlapping exercises. And if you even just refer back to the golden era of bodybuilding, you got many folks utilizing calisthenic based exercises to build their back with the pull-ups, their biceps with the chin-ups, the chest with the dips. And these three exercises, and of course there's many more, are the bread and butter foundational movements for calisthenics, which is why if we take this argument approach, this is why calisthenic athletes can actually achieve very similar physiques to that of bodybuilders who are natural, specifically the silver era bodybuilders. And the reason why I'm even bringing specifically the silver era bodybuilders and not like golden era or modern era is because, let's be real here, the time of when testosterone was actually distributed in the bodybuilding scene was around, I believe, 1954. So it was like the mid 1950s. So that's like the tail end of the silver era bodybuilders. So everything before that, we can majority agree upon that they are natural in terms of their physiques and the way that they train. And everything after like 1960s, 70s, 80s, and even today, that's where it started to become more common to introduce like enhancement drugs, testosterone, etc. Within the bodybuilding scene. And I'm sure y'all can agree that golden era is completely juiced up. That's why you got bodybuilders looking crazy. And then modern era is like even crazier. But I don't want to segue between the different eras, but that's why I'm referring to just the silver era, because this is what the natural body can attain if you train at a high level and you're doing everything correctly. You're training right, you're eating right, and you're doing enough cardio to stay lean. Now, it is important to note that through calisthenics, you can tend to shift the degree of muscle building in favor to certain muscle groups that will change the overall appearance of one's physique. But that's just because there's an emphasis on certain muscle groups based upon the nature of training calisthenics. It's heavily dependent on the chest, back, and shoulders, such as exercises with the dips, pull-ups, and chin-ups, or the handstand push-ups. But like I mentioned, that's only true if you train the lens of just calisthenics to increase strength and not the lens of building the body. Now, if one wanted to really train within the lens of a bodybuilder through the use of calisthenics, they will most certainly be able to build a physique similar to that of the silver era, because there's equipment that I mentioned before, such as gymnastic rings, parallel bars. You can do weighted calisthenics to help aid your progressive overload journey in order to build those muscle groups further. Now, if you're wondering exactly how one can train like a bodybuilder through the use of calisthenics or through the use of calisthenics and weightlifting, aka hybrid training, then go ahead and book a free 15-minute consultation call with your boy, and we can discuss how you're currently training, what goals you're looking to attain, and the next best steps to help you achieve your desirable physique. So if you're interested, make sure you click the link in the description or check the pinned comments. Now that I said what I need to say based off what I pretty much preconceived from the post, let's read a couple of these comments and see what they got to say. So the first one is by Roku Dukakis. He says, in response to the question of, why calisthenic athletes look the way that they look, it's because they're lean and natural and therefore not huge. That probably covers most of it. Also, not training for hypertrophy in specific areas to create a certain look, as in bodybuilding. And that's kind of like tying into the last point, with calisthenic training. Most people who just train within the lens of just calisthenics will have a similar physique within the realm of specifically training for calisthenics, meaning for strength. But if you wanted to train just calisthenics and everything under the umbrella of calisthenics, but within the bodybuilder lens, meaning you kind of isolate your muscle groups as the premise of the way you approach your training, you can get a very similar bodybuilder physique to that of the silver era. Next comment. Please ditch your somewhat unrealistic expectations and aspirations to achieve the physique of fictional characters. Concrete skills, mobility, fitness goals after measurable progress and documenting training paths. I do agree with that point. It kind of just leads on to what I said, like, pick the lesser evil. I'd rather you seem to be seeking inspiration from somebody who's actually real than someone who's from the animes or video game realm, honestly. Last but not least, aside from body fat levels, pretty much all the difference in muscle you will see from those different types of athletes will be from if they take steroids and how much they take. Very good point. Which is why I'm also referenced back to the silver era, because it's not good to refer to what the body can look like if you're looking at golden era bodybuilders or modern era bodybuilders. He continues to say, a natural bodybuilder isn't going to look different than a calisthenics guy after they both properly train for 5+ years. Key word, if they both properly train for 5+ years, meaning if you're training with similar goals, meaning to build a body, which is what the bodybuilder is. And also if the calisthenic athlete is doing the same through the use of calisthenics. Of course, you got to put in 5 years, maybe even like close to that 6 to 10 year range. But a natural bodybuilder is not going to look much different than a natural calisthenic athletes, given that they're doing everything correctly in terms of their training approach, their nutrition, the way that they're doing cardio, the way that they're just putting in enough time, meaning years of training. Like, to be honest, they're going to look very similar. There might be little biases of like shapes of muscle groups, such as the muscle insertions because it's genetics, or maybe emphasis of muscle mass on one particular muscle group because maybe calisthenic is more heavily dependent on like the shoulders for pressing based movements, whereas with bodybuilding they might be focusing more so on other muscle groups from an aesthetic standpoint and how they just genetically look like, you know. All in all, I want to know what y'all think in regards to whether or not natural calisthenic athletes can look like natural bodybuilders, whether it's the silver era, the bronze era, the golden era, the modern era. Let me know what y'all think. Comment down below. But hey, what do I know? If you want to see more content like this, be sure to follow me, man. I'm tough for this guy here. No cap.
Cobra trains. He's up next. Make sure y'all subscribe to him. He's number one out here.
He's the toughest fitness guy out here.